Well, hi, this is Janet Fitch, and it is Writing Wednesday from YouTube. Um, and if you're new to Writing Wednesday, this is where I talk about all things writing. Writing problems, writing advice, psychology, philosophy, um, everything having to do with the writer's life. So, welcome to Writing Wednesday on YouTube. I'm currently taking a break from Facebook Live, where I normally do this. So, feel free to write your questions in the comments, and I am happy to answer your questions. Write them in the chat. Um, and if you have questions for me, in between Writing Wednesdays, you can always write to me on my website, janetfitchwrites.com. I'm a novelist and a teacher for many years, and I've just decided that it's fun to have the interaction with people, not necessarily in a formal setting, a class or something, but when I was a young writer, I did not have a degree. I was a history major, but I did not have a writing program. I wasn't an English major. I didn't know any writers. I lived out in the boonies. And It took me a long time to master my art. It took a long time. I, the purpose of Writing Wednesday is, let's see if I can shorten this up for some people. So it'll be interesting to see if people find their way from Facebook over to YouTube. Um, and We're going to jump in and give it a try. So please, if you have questions, put them in the chat and I will be happy to answer them. But today's topic is portraits. The creating portraits of people. I noticed that in my classes, teaching writers, often they just can't describe people. They cannot just, they don't have the tools. Um, People talk and they walk around, but we never really get them because people are shy. Writers are often shy and they hesitate to look at people and to, do their notebooks. I encourage all of you to create writer's notebooks and keep your observations of people alive. I carry often a small notebook with me at all times, like this, just commenting on what I see, what I hear. There's one thing to notice something and another thing to take that second look. And carrying a notebook where you could write down little snatches of things that you've noticed, it trains the mind, it trains the observational muscle to stop and look again and look again, look a third time. Can I capture that? What am I seeing? What am I seeing? And my training as a writer was largely, even from a little being a little kid, was learning to look and look again. And if it's somebody you're observing at a diner or at the bank or something, you can also take a guess about who they are. I mean, my mother trained me that way. She didn't mean to. But she'd be bored. She'd be standing in line at the market or at the, bank or something. Or we'd be sitting in a diner, and she'd point to somebody and she said, "Tell me about that person. You know, where do they live? What do they do for a living? What's his name? Does he have kids? And I would start creating a story about that person, what his name was and what he did for a living, just based on what I was seeing, um, and where he lived, and got into who his wife was and the conflicts with the children, and just based on that one look at him, just studying somebody. And what you do with this. Hi, Amy. Hi, Zunaid. You found it. Excellent. It gives a bigger picture of my workspace here. um, so, part of the writer's notebooks, I've shown you mine. When I was learning to write, this was my religion. So, I would just take anything I saw that caught my attention. It catches your attention for a reason. And you might not know what the reason was. You might not realize that, oh, this catches my attention because that gesture or that torn hem or something about that person is catching your attention. Um, and if you take notes, if you put your notes in your writer's notebook, um, then later you can use that and write, use them as a character, use that as a character trait. But you have to train the muscle, the observational muscle. And it's what people who spend all their time, kind of not looking at people and staying home, and, it's counter trend. So I'm asking you to go out and look at people and take notes, and uh, also landscapes. My notebooks are divided, exercises. This one is just portraits and landscapes. This one notebook. I have another notebook, whole binder, and these are big binders of, buildings, light, smells, sounds, But today I wanted to talk about, hi, hi, Jill. Hi, it's Langnu one. I know you, but welcome. Um, it's portraits. Learning to describe people enriches your fiction so much. I mean, people um, will think of your characters as real people if you can describe them. And often you'll just, in your notebook, you'll describe them at length, but you will maybe only use the most striking descriptions in your fiction. I found that the most important thing about this exercise is doing it, is the muscle that you develop by describing people. You learn then what makes for a character, a memorable character, a vivid character. So you might not be using, these long descriptions, but you might been just push. It's like doing push-ups. It's like doing crunches. It's developing the muscle, and there's just no way to become the writer that you might want to become without putting in this kind of work. Hi, Elisheva. Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How many years have you kept that particular writer's notebook? I started this notebook in, I'd say, 1990, 91, 92, but I add to it. I used to, just write down, take my notebooks, type up what I'd written in the notebooks, and then physically cut the pages and tape them into this writer's notebook. And of course, they're all falling off now. So it's better, it is easier to type up your notes of what you've observed in going out and just observing the world, and then cut and paste on your computer until you have a full page of, say, portraits, and then print it out and put it in your notebook. Then stuff doesn't fall out. But I'm a great believer in um, hardbound, in hard copy, because as somebody who's gone through at least 4 computers and floppy disks, mini floppies, and that computer and that computer, and there's nothing like printing it out and just having it and being able to leaf through it and just seeing, reacquainting yourself with how you did that. Um, Sarah says, do you date the entries? No, I don't. It does not matter when it was. It matters that I did that work, and that I caught something interesting about that character, about that person. So no, I don't. Jill says, I love describing characters. Yeah, well, You must be a writer. um, I have, so I just wanted to give you some samples of what kind of things end up in this. Um, it looks like here's one that will be useful to me for the rest of my life, is listening to voices. Like one of the things that people do in fiction now, I'm sure you've noticed, is that they talk a lot, but you never hear them. You never hear an actual human voice. Like, what do they sound like? And once you get voices in your uh, portraits category, um, you can give them to anybody. You know, you can give them to, like, for instance, um, I might have a relative who has a flat nasal, a woman, flat nasal, dry voice, unimpressed, dry wit. I can give that to anybody. You know, it doesn't have to be my aunt. Um, there is, uh, you can do famous people and give their voices to regular people. You know, nobody's going to know that it's Billie Holiday, you know. Um, uh, Sensual plays with the sounds, the music, the depth of experience and feelings, rich, the style of slurring, that hip sound. Um, Here's um, and then a list of gestures. You know, always look at gestures. It's a great thing to do when you're watching a movie. You can stop and look at the gesture and challenge yourself to describe it. It's a great thing to do with if you're in a boring meeting at work. I never trust the writers. The boring meeting at work, and they're like, they're not taking notes. They're describing the person who's talking or somebody else, you know, the gestures they make, the facial expressions. Um, Big, you know, here's some just a list of gestures: nail biting, of course, hair twisting, hand dusting, ear digging, nail inspecting, nail tapping, toe tapping, drumming. Drumming. Oh, have you ever had a drummer in class? You know, I had a pencil twirler in class, um, and at USC when I was teaching in a master's program. And, you know, pencil twirling, it was driving me crazy because I think I'm a little bit, you know, that little twitchy movement really catches my attention. And I asked him to, could you stop doing that like halfway through the semester? And he said, I'm a drummer and I just do it. And I, you know, and I said, can you not do it where I can see it? Because I can see it and it's distracting me from teaching everybody else. So he put his pencil down and then he was just drumming on everything. He just couldn't stand it. I said, okay, twirl, but don't sit where I can see you. Here's a big arm gestures, you know, here I am, you know, the person who is making a big wave. Um, the eyeglass, there's a lot of eyeglass mannerisms, you know, taking the glasses off to have the you know, the heart to heart, or looking over the glasses, you know, are you really doing that? Hair, scalp picking, lip biting, nose picking, mushy lip puckering as applying lipstick, you know, when you watch your mother, you know, that thing. Where they cross the legs, etc. Hands in armpits for warmth. This is the kind of thing that makes your book alive, is to inhabit these characters, to really look at um, shoulders coming around ears for fear of being hit. Um, People who sit on the floor with knees in, feet out. Have you ever, you know, some often girls can sit like that, teenage girls. Uh, Stroking the inside of the arm like slicing the vein. Um, you know, guys who scratch the crotch in public, you know, grab themselves. It's become very popular. I don't know. Picking at the face, picking at the scab. Anyway, you can do a few pages go out, sit on a bus bench and, or be in a crowded place. Or, if you're that shy, watch a movie and watch people's, or watch the news or watch something and start assembling gestures. You'll use it all your life. Um, Picking at a chapped lip, that'd be such a good gesture in the middle of a scene as somebody is picking at their chapped lips, and why people touch themselves. There's a wonderful book called Mansplaining, Man Watching by Desmond Morris, who was like a social anthropologist, I think, uh, who just observed humans the way he would observe any other primate and notice what they're doing, like the body cross. You see, like, there's pictures of Queen, dear departed, Queen Elizabeth, you know, like checking her purse, or uh, it's called the body cross, and it's a little protective thing that people do when they're nervous. Um, the hand gestures, anything the hands can do, because in writing, in fiction writing, think of the three levels of landscape. We've talked about this on many a Writing Wednesday. And for those who haven't been on YouTube, all the Writing Wednesdays, or most of them, are archived on Writing Wednesday on YouTube. Um, you have the master shot, in which the sky is the actor. You have the personal level, in which the human being, the form, is the scale. So then those would be what the body is doing as a whole, where the weight is, the posture in the chair, that kind of thing. And then there's the third level is the intimate level, and that is the hand is the actor. So it really, really helps to develop a vocabulary of hand gestures. Um, Men with long fingernails, that's something that catches your attention. Rock musicians, Rastafarians, muttering schizophrenics, an ordinary Chinese man at Savon who had one long little nail. The guy who worked there. He was such a character, so interesting. Um, of the feel when you shake hands with somebody, and feel their hands, describe that. Everybody's hands are different, handshake, and how my character in the novel that I'm writing now is a printer. And so her hands are quite rough, and they're very hard, and she's a very strong person physically. And so, when she shakes hands with somebody, she's aware of the hands, that what they're feeling of her hand, and she's feeling their hand. So she shakes somebody's hand and feels there's some, say, a gallery guy, and she shakes his hands and feels that rough skin. She knows that he washes in turpentine, that he uses lava soap. He's a painter. He looks like he's this, gallery representative, but he's a secret painter, and she feels that. Or people with very soft skin, and it's like how that mind must feel in her hand. Um, you know, Hard hands that have never held a shovel, a pick, an axe, being stroked with a hard hand, irritating. It's hard to find a tenderness in the hand. Soft hand, indolent and delicious, silky skin. Hands dry from washing, scrubbing, changing diapers, and washing again. The clean hands of being washed all day, doctors, nurses, mothers, hairdressers, and cooks. Grimy hands, dye under the fingernails and around the cuticle. Printers' hands, like my girl. Mechanics' hands, pale but grimy. The ink never comes out. It never comes out. People missing parts of their hands, fingers, fingertips. Carpenters, printers, carpenters, machinists. Um, some people have a tattoo on the web of their hand, which is very interesting, and is something that you can come back to in your description of that person. Is super interesting. Small, fleshy hands seem like a crudely sensual personality. So this is my observation and my thought about what I'm observing. Um, Big white chapped men's hands, sexy as a moldy dishcloth. Sorry, guys. Oh, hi, Bozena. Good to see you. Uh, Amy says, I cast my characters in my head with real actors, especially if my characters are inspired by real people and need to be disguised. That is the whole reason you're doing this, is so you can fill the character with whatever content is part of their character, but you can borrow uh, people who actually exist, and there's a lot of material about them to study. So they're an easy study. If you want to say you have a character with certain, personal characteristics, but you need to embody them somehow. Are they tall? Are they short? Are they tough? Are they grizzled? Are they, and then you look at Humphrey Bogart. You say, okay, they're sort of like Humphrey Bogart. And then you study Humphrey Bogart and you look at those gestures and you look at that face and you look at how he's put together. So I have a lot of gestures, pages and pages of gestures and things I noticed. Um, uh, I wanted uncanny traits. I have a list. I have a couple of pages on it. Think about that. What makes a character seem uncanny to you? Uh, Eyes that are two different colors. Bowie was always uncanny because his eyes were different. Um, Somebody who has a handsome side of their face and a cruel side of their face. And it's like, which side? That's like the movie Boston Strangler. Which side do they face? I mean, many of us have, our good side and our bad side. What's the difference? And other people have that too. And it's an uncanny trait. Missing fingers, the scar down the middle of a face, like a crack in a mirror, somebody who always wears gloves makes you wonder about their hands, right? A person whose gaze is like an animal's, sees everything but is opaque. Um, a person who rarely looks you in the eye. I have a couple of friends who just never look you directly in the eye. They're always out to one side. And then when they do look at you, the intense gaze can be overpowering because you didn't know um, that they had that. The smell that appears when a person isn't there, maybe a warning or contact before something happens. If somebody, has a certain, say, perfume or smell, and you walk into the room and the smell is there, they've been. I use that a lot in. I use that a lot in every book, actually, but especially the last. Every book, every person has their own scent. And I know in Marina M, the Revolution of Marina M, my last uh, part of that Russian duet, the father smokes cherry tobacco in his pipe. So when she smells the cherry tobacco, it's like the father is nearby or was there. Um, it's a scent signal of his portrait. Things that are uncanny. Um, Dogs who are afraid of them. They always find things that are lost. They always find money. Cars won't start if they're around. That's an uncanny trait. My When I was dating this guy in college, he his car wouldn't start whenever I got in it. The car wouldn't start. It never did that to anyone else, and it never did that to him, only when I got in the car. And I know it was because this car was his baby, his pride and joy, his girlfriend. And as soon as I got in, she didn't like it. So she wouldn't take us anywhere. He had to get it started and then I could get it. um, Things, people who always keep their drapes drawn. That's an uncanny trait. Um, oh God, if they have sleeping bags stapled over the windows, get out of there. It's not good. Um, People who all their statuary is headless or armless. That's a good trait, huh? Um, People who are rock climbers and can climb the corner of a wall. You ever seen anybody do that? That is a great trait. That is very uncanny to see a human being just climb up a wall like that. Um, People who are afraid of odd things, afraid of cameras, they're afraid of cats. That's an interesting trait to give. So make a list. Make a list of uncanny things that you think are uncanny, and that you might be able to put. Um, People who have webbed fingers, or people who have. I knew somebody who had hands that the fingers were wasp waisted. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like each finger had a very narrow flange next to the hand. That was so creepy. That guy was so creepy because the hands were creepy. So what are creepy? What's uncanny? Make a list. Put it in portraits. So this is the kind of thing that I collect. Here's um, you know, say, oh, there's all kinds of big and small. Um, the neighbor whose marriage you've admired, who has two kids, asks you quietly how long you've been married, how it's going with you. Are you having problems too? Wow, I'm going to keep that. That was very interesting. Um, the man who cannot express his own anger, but instead prods other people into senseless rage. It makes him feel powerful. So these aren't just physical descriptions. This is like capturing something that you noticed about someone. Um, a girl dressed to break your heart. Badly fitted, brand new, very spike heeled black shoes. She's swimming in them. Longish black skirt, but slid up the back to the tail of her purple shirt. Long, clean, young, silky hair in a black duffel bag. She thinks she looks fabulous. And it's so pathetic and tender. Just notice what you notice. Take that extra, do that extra take. That most people don't have time for that. They would see that girl and just think, oh, what a mess or whatever, and move on. As a writer, you owe it to yourself to take that quiet next step. And what is it about that girl that just grabbed your attention? And sort it out, write it down, get it into your writer's notebook. Um, uh, let's see what I have. Here's somebody that I actually must know because I gave. Oh, this is a somebody I might have known. um, Thin, medium height, poet's curly hair, and bright blue eyes, turned up nose, but a bold, challenging look to his face, restless, spoiled by women, boyish, freckles, disarming smile, but very untrustworthy and manipulative, unstable, small bow shaped mouth, high poetic forehead, hair swept back, cigarette smoker, nicotine stained fingers, gets cold easily, well dressed, not highly sexual, strange, watches the smoke curling up from his cigarette, watches things with an uncanny concentration and absorption, attracted to beauty and vulnerability in a girl, but the motherness and childness, he's attracted to people who are going to take care of him, right? Interesting. Um, let's see. Really kooky young girls out with old hippie guys. I was there and I saw that. I guess it was interesting to me. Um, he loved to gossip about his friends. Nobody's weaknesses remained hidden, so people were on guard with him, much as they liked him. This is a Dutch woman, tall and long boned, eyes slightly too close together like a Modigliani, thin arches of dark brows, hair cut straight across a jawline. She gets mad very quickly, intense brown eyes. She's odd. She's married to the smiling Italian. She says when she was a girl, her mother wouldn't let her read books, only in secret, because it wasn't a waste, because it was a waste of time. You should be helping me cook and clean. Um, when she was 12, the mother, so here's a little anecdote. The mother put her in a school to teach girls how to clean and iron and sew, preparing her for us being a servant for 3 years. Um, Classes on how to iron. In Holland, different days you do different things. Monday you do the washing, Tuesday you iron, Wednesday you wash the windows, Thursday question mark. Friday wash the sidewalk in front of your house, Sunday you dust and vacuum, Saturday you go to the market. The fury of this woman against her stupid mother. Brothers didn't have this. When she turned 18, read for months on end, defying the mother, hypersensitive to others, toadying to those she wants to cultivate, monopolizing at parties. She blatantly disregards the feeling of others, even enjoys their troubles. When one mother had a disagreement with her, made a joke, she was so offended she wouldn't allow the woman to get in a word when she came to apologize. She unloaded all her thin skinned grievances, practically weeping. And I go on with that. Oh, that when the child was in school she didn't get accepted to, where her child was waitlisted, she said to the mother with a big smile, she didn't even get waitlisted. I thought everyone got waitlisted. That was obviously somebody that I had met. Um, let's see what else. So, how often do you tend to update the notebook? Um, Sarah asks, how much of a reflex has it become for you? I write in those little notebooks every time I go out. And then maybe every couple of months, I'll type up what's in those little notebooks and then cut and paste, not physically, but on my computer, it into the various um, divisions on of portraits, landscapes, light, smells, sounds, etc. And then I print that out maybe every 6 months or so, maybe once a year. I don't print it out as often, but it's just training you to do the observation all the time, all the time. Um, the flat footed, determined stride of a woman pushing a baby stroller. Old man picks up his feet high as he walks, fearful of tripping on something. Um, Two street guys clowning around on the corner, fake fighting playfully, but with drunk men, this turns bad in an instant. And the next moment, he's cracking the other one's skull open on the curb. A woman has days when everything is an omen, sign of something else. The shakier her sanity, the more she fears that other people are going mad. Men on the fringe, men shocked into consciousness that they were living lives which seemed to be determined not by their own will, but by massive myths, cosmic fictions over which they had no control. Let's see if I can get some uh, portraits of the great writer. The students assemble, and one student is very sick, has to lie down. The writer asks not, "Are you all right?" but "Are you contagious?" The worst writer in the world. Intellectual 40, gold watch, curly gray hair, gold wire rimmed glasses. First, there was an awful multi character timeless play, and now a totally self indulgent script full of pretension and cliche about a man recovering from divorce, obviously autobiographical. Fantasy about an angel who is a sexy woman and fucks him. He has these little dimples in the corners of his small, vulnerable mouth, like Muammar Gaddafi. So smug, so pleased with himself, he doesn't notice everyone falling out of their chairs from boredom. Has to read his own stuff, doesn't really want to hear it, wants to perform. Evidently, he is a casting agent, a real asshole to work for, screams at people. Someone who gets his ass kissed too much. He makes the bad novel. It made the bad novel seem better. Here's the at the Winchells. I miss the Winchells, our local Winchells, which is was a just a little donut shop with some seating where it was really a place where you could go and sit and you didn't have to pay a shitload of money. So you got a really nice cross section of people. Um, there is a writer here in LA, Diana Wagman, whose first novel um, starts in the Winchells with a conversation. Forgot the name of the book. It was a really good book, and she used that Winchells really well because she wrote there every day. Um, so here's at the Winchells, a tiny, overstrung old woman with hair in a French twist, pants, sleeveless shell, glasses, is haranguing a big fat Oriental man, talking about the advantages of different modes of burial. Catholicism, she is, her grandchildren are Episcopal, and as I was saying to the priest, haranguing him. She has a purse, so I doubt she is from the Lodge, which is our local board and care for mentally challenged people, emotionally challenged people. I doubt she's from the Lodge, also too well groomed. She has a hairnet on her hair. He looks like he could be, though, from the Lodge. Um, I couldn't figure out what they might have in common, who they were. I couldn't figure out what they might have in common, who they were talking about together in a Winchell's at 1:30 on a Friday afternoon. Maybe he was already there at the Winchell's. It was busy and she joined him. He was huge and grotesque, but had a decent vocabulary, not a moron, which was my first thought. You just stumble across people and try to figure out, like, this is what my mother would have me do when I was a kid. Who are those people? And I was looking at those people really hard because I could not figure out what they had in common. It was fascinating. Um, she was the kind of woman who passed from man to man like a dollar bill. She never was just alone. She moved from one man to another, never left one until she had the next. Wow. Self-destructiveness, objective correlations. So objective correlative is a thing that gives you a state of mind or personality. These tend to be more gestures, so that's why it's in portraits. Um, so Zunaid says Just to let you know that the audio muffles just a bit when the file is placed close to you. Then it's clear when you move the file away. So when it's this way, it's better, and when this way, it's less. I think I might be laying the notebook on top of wherever the sound comes out. Yeah, here's a little bit of okay. This is a little bit of technical of technical stuff. So let's try it this way. Let's move the computer itself over and then do this. How's that? Yay. So self-destructiveness. Um, Gee, I wonder where the mic is in the computer. How's that? Is that okay? Um, People self-destructiveness, people who eat garbage food on the run, people who never sit down and have a meal, they just pick it up and eat it running to the next thing they eat in the car. I was 19 before I ever saw anybody eat in the car. um, Eat a hamburger and a Coke with a stick shift car. I'd never seen anything like it. um, People who, self-destructiveness, you start thinking of alienating people who are really good friends, believing in fate, going to the palm reader, etc. And my astrologer says, that's a person who's like losing ground. um, the hosts, oh, this was funny, this was real. The host's beautiful girlfriends, all tall, waspy numbers in long black dresses, like long-stemmed beauty queens. They go home early, and then the less refined ones arrive. Um, the host's brother, the most desperate. Oh, here, there's the host's brother, the most desperate one, has greasy, longish hair, looks like Daniel Day-Lewis, but scummier, keeps wanting to vogue all over the girls, keeps cranking the stereo, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then miraculously the stereo stops. Then suddenly and for no reason, it starts again at 7. You go out, but there's nobody awake, just the host's demonic brother asleep on the living room floor. But somehow, in his drunken fitfulness, he's managed to get up and turn the stereo on again. Don't leave, he seems to be saying. Don't let it be over. He's like a little kid who doesn't want the other kids to go home, even though it's dark and their dinners are waiting. There's still time, he seems to be saying. Don't leave yet. Love me, he says, but there's nothing to love. By about 2, the sane people have mostly left the party, and what remains are the drunken single guy friends of the host, the late nighter leather jacket crowd, the dancers, the late arrivers, the women who want certain men who haven't yet paid attention, the men with nowhere else to go, the party hardcore. Um, so I urge you to start taking notes on people, noticing gestures, noticing voices. And it's a very nice thing to do, watching movies, to stop and notice the gestures. Really see if you can grab voices, people's voices. Use musical terminology. Like if that person was an instrument in the orchestra, like what instrument would they have been? Um, there's Here's some voices that I keep all of these. Um, Here's a man with a uh, thick voice, heavy bodied, often speaks softly, not to be overheard, but a big open laugh. I can use that all day long. Um, Then there's this guy, hail fellow, medium pitch, soft and caring, gentle, friendly, uses a diminutive even if the relationship doesn't call for it. So it's somebody who's, comes across as very warm and, engaging, but will call you, if your name is, say, Jim, call you Jimmy, It's like, I don't know you well enough for you to call me Jimmy. It's a certain kind of insinuating voice. Here's a, um, these are actually people I know. Dry Western voice, mid-range, but extremely dry. Sometimes drops almost to a whisper, but still voiced. It's a sandy voice, a very Western sound to me. I've used his voice for so many things. Here's a woman, monotonous whine on top of a rich, fruity voice. If she ever was excited about something, her voice could ripen and bloom. She just can't get excited about anything. So it's got that whine. Um, um, Here's somebody else, a man, slow, rich, a bit pedantic, irony rather than open mirth, like he's tasting wine. Um, Here's a woman who hired me for something. Velvety woman's voice, calming, soothing, measured, like vanilla cream, hypnotic. Um, Here's somebody who had been an actress, clear, a bit nasal, occasionally with an unpleasantly argumentative undertone, querulous, a bit gravelly, does many accents as she speaks, Cockney, Yiddish, Valley Girl. Here's Richard Burton. A great lion of a voice, or soft like sandpaper, a voice of pure passion. I could use give people Burton's voice. Or here's Elizabeth Taylor, a surprisingly high girlish voice, pouty, self-assured, but can tend to the coarse and braying. I mean, you could look at the movies and characterize people's voices, and it's great because you can go back, listen again. Here's Dan Rather, the deep, sincere tones of the Midwesterner, the slight hint of the Texan. Here's Tom Brokaw, the typical deepened TV reporter voice, but there's a speech eccentricity. The swallowed L, listen up, Dallas instead of Dallas. Can you grab people's speech impediments or the small eccentricities of their speech? Sam Donaldson, who was a newscaster. Peter Jennings from the Midwest, with a bit of the aggressiveness of Mike Wallace. So an aggressiveness. Whereas Peter Jennings, even more deepened TV reporter with Canadian traces, boot, self-consciously responsible. Joan Rivers, the New York Jewish girl whine raised to an art form. Geraldine Page, quick rhythm, surprisingly girlish, a rush of words, vulnerable pauses. You can just go on and on. Pick your favorite celebs and try the voices. And then you use them. You use people. You use these. You give this all to characters. You give them to characters. So what else can I tell you about doing these? Just take your little notebooks and see what you get. You're going to get all kinds of things, but for a while, maybe the next week, mean, we certainly have people who are outrageous right now and drawing our attention. Well, instead of just saying how much you hate them, um, why don't we describe Elon Musk? To me, he looks like El Chiffre in the Bond movie, the Bond villain. Um, but can you actually describe his face? The flatness of the planes, the distance, that upper lip that goes down, and what does his mouth look like when it's moving? Describe Bezos, describe Zuckerberg, all these people who are, distorting the picture. And then, the circus car of these nominations. Can you describe Pete Hegseth or whatever his name is, or some of these people that are being nominated and then sitting in front of Congress, lying their heads off. Look at them and just see it, rather than talking about how we feel about them, or what they're saying. Let's look at them. And how would you describe them to somebody, say, I mean, have you ever had to describe somebody in an airport? How do you know? How will I know how to, if you're picking up my friend, I have to describe my friend in a way that you can look for them. And it's like, oh, you'll find them. This is what they look like. It's some people cannot describe anyone, but we are writers, and in the battle between the picture and the word, we have to remain on the side of the word. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, sometimes a well-chosen sentence can encapsulate something about that picture, something about that person that most people would miss. And when the reader reads it, they're delighted to be able to find that person. It's like, oh my God, that's really, I see that. I see them. He's a big, blustery bore. Yeah. Well, that's definitely descriptive, but how big is he? How blustery is he? Well, blustery, yeah. Uh, I I think that we will get so much out of capturing people more on the fly, people you see. Just try to, you look at somebody in a diner, pick somebody and describe them, and then see what you can get out of that. What give us a portrait of that person. What's he doing? Why is he eating lunch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Is he late sleeper? What do you think he does for a living that he has dinner at 3? Or is he having breakfast at 3? Musician. Responsible musician. Well, anyway, this is while on a plane or train, bus, waiting in line at the endless line of the at the CVS, or whatever your local drugstore is. The lines are getting very, very long. Yeah, the perfect thing to do on a plane, or waiting for a plane, in those when you're just sitting there across from somebody for an hour or 2 hours, and your plane was delayed, and then you have another hour. Be more curious about people. It's the difference between people who don't really look at other people and see people. They just see objects that are in their way. It's a real problem in our society that people look at other people and don't recognize that there's a world in there. That's a person, and a very interesting creature, people. Even though sometimes we're making it up, right? All right. Well, thank you very much. And tell me if you liked the live stream on YouTube, if that's interesting to you. always trying to get away from the billionaires who run some of our most used uh, platforms and services. Always trying to get away from them. Jill says, sometimes I've gotten in trouble for staring at people. One woman glared at me and said, "What are you looking at?" You could just say, "Oh, I love that outfit you've put together. Oh, God, you remind me of somebody I really liked when I was a kid." Or, you cover. So Amy said that this is a good venue and screw Facebook. Well, we'll see how it goes. You get to see more of my living environment anyway, that's for sure. I don't have to use my phone. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. And we can all thank my across the street neighbor who stopped sawing on his circular saw in his driveway so